Hi, JustProfessor here again. Good-looking people get paid more, get away with crimes easier, and are assumed to be smarter and nicer than everyone else. And your brain does this automatically without you even realizing you're being completely unfair. There's this weird thing your brain does where it takes one good quality about a person and suddenly decides that everything else about them must be good too. You see someone who's attractive, and your brain immediately assumes they're also kind, intelligent, trustworthy, and talented. Or you find out someone went to a fancy school and suddenly you think they must be good at everything. This happens in reverse too. One bad quality makes you think everything about that person is bad, and this bias affects huge decisions in your life. Who gets hired, who gets promoted, who goes to jail, who you trust, who you vote for. It's called the halo effect, and it's running your life right now. The halo effect is basically your brain being lazy. Instead of judging each quality of a person separately, your brain takes a shortcut. It sees one obvious trait and uses that to fill in all the blanks about everything else. It's like your brain says, okay, this person is good at this one thing, so they're probably good at everything. Or, this person has this one bad quality, so they're probably bad at everything. The scariest part is how automatic this is. You don't sit there consciously thinking, this person is attractive, therefore they must be smart. It just happens in your brain without any effort. And because it happens automatically, you don't even notice you're doing it. You genuinely believe you're making fair judgments about people based on their actual qualities, but you're not. You're being massively influenced by irrelevant things. Let me show you how deep this goes. Researchers have done tons of studies on this, and the results are wild. In one study, they had people look at photos of strangers and rate their personality traits. The attractive people in the photos were rated as more intelligent, more successful, more friendly, and more honest than the less attractive people. These were just photos. Nobody knew anything real about these people. But based purely on looks, people made sweeping assumptions about their entire personality and capabilities. This shows up in the real world in ways that actually matter. Studies show that attractive people get hired more often, even when their qualifications are identical to less attractive candidates. They get promoted faster. They get paid more money for doing the same work. When attractive people go to court for crimes, they get lighter sentences on average compared to less attractive people who committed the same crimes. Teachers give better grades to attractive students. Voters are more likely to vote for attractive political candidates. None of this is fair, none of this is right, but it happens constantly because of the halo effect. Someone's appearance creates a halo around them that makes everything else about them seem better, and we're all guilty of this. Even people who swear they judge everyone fairly. The halo effect doesn't just apply to physical attractiveness, though. That's the most obvious example, but it works with any positive trait. If someone is charming and charismatic, you assume they're also competent and honest. If someone is successful in business, you assume they're also smart about everything else, even topics they know nothing about. If someone is confident, you assume they know what they're talking about. If someone dresses nicely and speaks well, you assume they're more capable than someone who dresses casually and has a different accent. Think about celebrity endorsements. Why do companies pay millions of dollars to have famous people promote their products? Because the halo effect makes people think that if someone is good at acting, or sports, or music, they must also have good judgment about cars, or insurance, or skincare. This makes no logical sense. Being a great basketball player doesn't mean you know anything about phones, but the halo from being famous and successful at one thing makes people trust their opinion on everything. This happens with brands too. If you have a good experience with one product from a company, you assume all their products are good. Apple is a perfect example. People love iPhones, so they assume everything Apple makes must be great quality. That's the halo effect. One good product creates a halo that extends to everything else. The reverse of the halo effect is called the horn effect, and it's just as powerful. One negative trait makes you assume everything else is negative too. If someone is unattractive, you unconsciously rate them as less intelligent and less trustworthy. If someone has a criminal record, you assume they're bad at everything and can't be trusted in any situation. If someone made one big mistake, you assume they're incompetent at everything. This is why first impressions matter so much. Your brain forms a quick judgment based on very limited information, and then that judgment creates a halo or horn effect that colors everything else you learn about that person. If the first thing you notice is positive, you'll interpret everything else through a positive filter. If the first thing you notice is negative, everything else gets filtered through that negative lens. Here's a crazy example from research. Teachers were given essays to grade. Some essays had names that sounded attractive or high status at the top. Other essays had names that sounded less attractive or lower status. The exact same essay got higher grades when it had a high-status sounding name on it. The teachers weren't trying to be biased. They genuinely thought the essays with high-status names were better written. The halo effect changed how they perceived the actual quality of the writing. The same thing happens in job interviews. If an interviewer likes you in the first 2 minutes, they'll interpret everything you say for the rest of the interview in a positive way. They'll overlook your mistakes and emphasize your strengths. If they don't like you in the first 2 minutes, they'll focus on your weaknesses and dismiss your strengths. The interview could go exactly the same way, but the outcome is completely different based on that initial halo or horn. Social media makes the halo effect even worse. People only post their highlights and their best moments. You see someone's curated feed full of success and fun experiences, and your brain creates a massive halo around them. You assume their whole life is amazing. You assume they're happier, more successful, more interesting than you are. But you're comparing their highlight reel to your everyday reality. The halo effect makes you forget that you're only seeing the best parts they choose to show. The halo effect also affects how you see yourself. If you're good at one thing, you might assume you're good at related things too, even when you're not. If you're successful in one area of life, you might think you're qualified to give advice about everything. This is why successful business people sometimes think they can run for political office with no experience. They have a halo around themselves that makes them overestimate their abilities in areas they know nothing about. So, how do you fight against the halo effect? How do you judge people and situations fairly, instead of letting one trait color everything? First, you need to actively separate different qualities in your mind. Force yourself to evaluate each trait independently. If someone is attractive, that tells you exactly one thing. They're attractive. It tells you nothing about their intelligence, personality, or abilities. If someone is successful at business, that tells you they're good at business. It doesn't tell you they're good at relationships, or health, or politics, or anything else. Train your brain to stop making those automatic jumps. Second, slow down your judgments. The halo effect works fastest when you're making quick, automatic decisions. When you slow down and think deliberately, you're more likely to catch yourself being biased. Before you make an important decision about someone, pause and ask yourself what you actually know versus what you're assuming. What evidence do you have for each quality you're attributing to them? Third, look for contradictory information. Your brain wants to ignore anything that doesn't fit the halo. If you've decided someone is great, you'll overlook their flaws. If you've decided someone is terrible, you'll overlook their good qualities. Actively search for information that contradicts your initial impression. If you think someone is amazing, look for their weaknesses. If you think someone is awful, look for their strengths. This helps balance out the bias. Fourth, be extra careful with first impressions. Remember that your initial reaction is going to create a powerful halo or horn effect. Don't trust your first impression as if it's the complete truth about someone. Treat it as limited data that needs to be updated as you learn more. Be willing to change your mind as you get more information. Fifth, watch out for the halo effect in yourself. Don't assume that being good at one thing makes you qualified for everything. Don't let success in one area make you overconfident about unrelated areas, and don't let one failure make you think you're bad at everything. Judge each situation on its own merits. Sixth, be aware of it when making important decisions. When you're hiring someone, evaluating a project, choosing who to trust, or making any significant choice, explicitly check yourself for halo effects. Ask, am I judging this fairly, or am I being influenced by one standout trait? Get second opinions from people who might see things differently. The halo effect is one of the most unfair biases humans have. It makes us treat people differently based on irrelevant characteristics. It makes attractive people sail through life with advantages they didn't earn. It makes less attractive people work twice as hard for half the recognition. It makes us trust the wrong people and doubt the right people. It affects hiring, grading, legal decisions, elections, and basically every social interaction. You can't completely eliminate the halo effect from your thinking. It's too automatic and too deeply wired into how your brain works, but you can become aware of it. You can catch yourself doing it. You can question your assumptions. You can deliberately look for evidence that contradicts your initial impressions. The next time you meet someone new, notice how quickly your brain tries to categorize them as good or bad based on very limited information. Notice how one trait seems to imply everything else about them. And then, stop yourself. Remind yourself that humans are complicated. Someone can be attractive and mean. Someone can be successful and dishonest. Someone can be awkward and brilliant. Someone can look unprofessional and be incredibly competent. Judge people as individuals, not as walking halos or horns. It's harder. It takes more mental effort. But it's the only way to be fair. And it's the only way to avoid making terrible decisions based on irrelevant information. The halo effect has been controlling your judgment your whole life. Now you know what it is and how to fight it. Subscribe if you want to learn about more hidden biases that are secretly controlling how you see people and make decisions.